I'm going to explain why saving your first £100,000 is the most important target if you want to be wealthy. Now, Charlie Munger, who passed away in 2023, was a self-made billionaire who built a fortune alongside Warren Buffett at Berkshire Hathaway and was known for his sharp intellect and no-nonsense approach to wealth. Now, while Buffett is the fifth richest man on the planet and is well known for his investment quotes and wisdom, Charlie Munger, when he spoke, it was worth paying attention. When talking about growing wealth, he once said that the first $100,000 is I'm not going to say the word, but you've got to do it. And I don't care what you have to do after that, you can ease off the gas a little bit. Now, I'm going to explain why he's right. And instead of focusing on an Everest-sized sum of money that means that it feels insurmountable, £100,000 is the base camp from which you can start building wealth. But first, let's go back a bit. So backtrack. If you want to build wealth over the long term, you need to understand something called compounding. Now, you may have heard the famous quote attributed to Einstein that goes something like, compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. He who understands it earns it. He who doesn't pays it. So compound interest is where you earn interest on your interest, also known as the snowball effect. If you save or you invest your money, then the profit you make is reinvested, so that continues to grow along with your original investment. Now, the term snowball effect refers to the idea of a snowball rolling down a hill that gets bigger and bigger and bigger as it descends. If you want a more mind-blowing example of compound interest, then if you took a chessboard and placed 1 grain of rice on the first square and then moved to the adjacent square and doubled that, so you place 2 grains of rice on that square, and then you move to the third square and double that again, so now you have 4 grains of rice on the third square, and you continue that, so on and so on. If you do continue that, keep doubling, when you get to the 64th and last square on the chessboard, the amount of rice that's on that square would actually cover a football pitch. But not only that, it would rise 37 kilometers into the sky. So that's why if you want to be rich, you need to harness the power of compounding. But while experts, including me, will explain this to people, compound interest is also the reason why rich people get richer while poor people generally stay poor. And I'm not just talking about poor people paying compound interest on debt, although that is obviously a problem. The reality is, when you start on your journey of building wealth from nothing or a very low starting point, it's the amount you put in to your investments that makes the difference, not the rate of return. So take an example of 2 people who both have money in the same investment generating a hypothetical annual rate of return of 8%. If you imagine person A has £1,000 in their pot and person B has £1 million in theirs, at the end of year 1, person A has gained £80, so they now have £1,080. Person B, who started with £1 million, has made £80,000 profit, so they have £1,080,000. Person B is getting wealthier while person A is staying relatively poor, because the magic of compounding doesn't work as well when you only have a small amount of money. You can't just compound your way out of poverty, which is a vision often sold by many online influencers, and that's because 8% of nothing is still nothing. Now, this brings me on to what I call the tipping point. For most people, this is an important step where they really start to see the power of compounding working for them. It's the point at which your wealth's average annual rate of return generates more money than your annual contributions. At this point, your money is making you richer faster than you are. Your existing wealth is doing more of the heavy lifting than the money you are able to add to the pot. Let's take an average person in the UK earning around £35,000 a year with a savings rate of 10%, which is around the national median. That means that they put £3,500 annually into their investments. Once their portfolio grows to over £43,750, the annual 8% return equates to more than the £3,500 they put in each year, meaning they've crossed the tipping point and their existing wealth is now out earning their savings effort thanks to the power of compounding. Mentally, this is an important moment of confirmation that you are starting to break free from the confines of just using your earnings to build a better life. But just because your existing wealth starts making you more money than you can contribute from your earnings, you still won't necessarily end up wealthy, because the lower the amount you save or invest, the lower that tipping point I've described. It's not until your pot grows to around about £100,000 that your wealth really accelerates and begins to change your life. When you have £100,000 of investable sustainable wealth. Not only will your existing pot of money likely be contributing more to your wealth than you can add, with an 8% return on £100,000, you would achieve £8,000 a year, which is around a quarter of the average annual UK wage. That means for someone on that average UK wage, they are essentially getting a 25% bonus for no extra work at all. But this brings us back to that powerful wisdom from Charlie Munger, which his bluntness highlights a crucial truth. The first 100,000 is by far the hardest, but once you hit it, it gets quicker, easier with every subsequent £100,000. Let's use the same example again, which is that you're earning the average UK wage and consistently investing 10% of your average UK earnings. So you're putting away £3,500 each year. To hit your first £100,000 with that £3,500 annual contribution and an 8% return, it's going to take you roughly 15 years and 2 months. That feels like a long time. That's the grind. But here's where it gets exciting. How long do you think it will take to get from £100,000 to £200,000? You're still contributing the same £3,500 a year, and you're still getting that hypothetical 8%. You're looking at potentially just 6 years and 10 months to get to £200,000. That's less than half the time it took you to make the first £100,000. What about the time it takes you to go from £200,000 to £300,000? That would take 4 years and 5 months. The jump from £400,000 to £500,000 is even faster, just 2 years and 7 months. This is proof that the earlier you hit £100,000, the faster you can get rich. Of course, while £100,000 is a far more achievable target to focus on than, say, £1 million, it's still a pretty big number, which brings me back to the crossover point I mentioned earlier. For most people, that's way below £100,000, and it's a more immediate motivating goal. Focus on getting your portfolio to a size where its average annual rate of return exceeds your annual contributions, and there you'll see a shift in momentum and your own mindset. But how do you ultimately get to that tipping point and then beyond, and more importantly to that first £100,000? There is another part of Munger's quote, and it says, I don't care what you have to do to get that $100,000. If it means walking everywhere and not eating anything that wasn't purchased with a coupon, find a way to get your hands on $100,000. Of course, he's right, but it also links nicely to a powerful movement called FIRE, which is Financial Independence Retire Early. At its core, FIRE, as it's abbreviated to, is about aggressively saving and investing until your portfolio generates enough passive income to cover all your expenses. This means you no longer need to work. Most people target having 25 times their annual expenses invested based on a historical 4% safe withdrawal rate. The FIRE movement stands on 4 key pillars, and these are high savings rates, you build your investment pot quickly, a lowering of your expenses, so you reduce your financial needs, frugal living, a bit like Munger said, where you might buy things with coupons. Increasing income is another key pillar, which means that you end up increasing your income so you've got more money to save and invest. And the fourth pillar is investing wisely, so putting your money to work through compounding. But I'm not particularly a major advocate of the FIRE movement, but I mention it because there is a relevant parallel in a type of FIRE movement called coast FIRE. Coast FIRE is where you've built up enough invested capital early in your life, often by your late 20s or 30s. So this initial pot, without any further contributions from you, will naturally grow through compounding to cover your traditional retirement expenses by a conventional retirement age, say 60 or 65. So let's say you hit that £100,000 mark that I've already mentioned. Your portfolio's annual growth is consistently out earning your contributions. You're essentially on your way to coast FIRE. You've front loaded your savings. You've given compounding so much time that it's doing all the heavy lifting for you. If the concept intrigues you, then by all means go and research about it, because I'm not going to dwell on it here. There's a whole online community dedicated to FIRE and coast FIRE. People who are advocates understand the importance of building a pot of money as soon as you can that can benefit from the power of compounding. I've also seen the £100,000 principle play out time and time again in my career in financial planning and running money to the masses. But I want to give you some practical steps to try and hit your first £100,000. So budgeting can only get you so far. So the first thing you need to do is boost your income. That's the biggest lever you can pull if you want to be able to save more and invest more to hit that 100,000k milestone. So that means look for side hustles. It could mean asking for a pay rise, learning new skills, or starting a small business. More income means more money to invest, which directly accelerates your journey to £100,000. You also need to max out tax efficiency. So the UK offers incredible tools for tax efficient investing. So things like ISAs, make sure you utilize your annual ISA allowance. Every penny of growth, every bit of income is shielded from tax within an ISA. And this is crucial because it helps you get to that £100,000 pot quicker. Also, don't overlook pensions, particularly workplace pensions. Employer contributions are essentially free money, often matching what you put in. Plus, you get tax relief on your contributions. Again, this is free money that turbocharges your capital and gets you to that £100,000 milestone even quicker. You need to invest consistently and diversify. So you really need to invest for the long term rather than relying on savings accounts and the interest rates you'll get there, because it will be way below what you could potentially achieve if you invest your money. But it does mean you need to diversify and manage risk. You don't want to take excess risk in the pursuit of possibly larger gains. Remember, in the early stages is what you put in that makes the biggest difference, not the rate of return. It's only once you get to the point you've gone past that tipping point, you've hit that £100,000 level, that compounding really takes effect. Don't try to be cute. Don't try to time the market. Make sure you diversify. And also learn to be patient. Market ups and downs are normal. Stick to your plan and don't panic sell. If you look at these steps, what you're really doing is starting to behave like the wealthiest people in society. It's a behavior shift that you start to learn, which will help you become wealthy, but it will also help you stay wealthy. If you look at the wealthiest people, they often look for the opportunities to make money. They also make their money work hard for them 24/7. They also avoid paying unnecessary tax. They use tax breaks to keep more of their money and accelerate their wealth growth. It's also about being focused and disciplined. If you follow these steps, you will start acting like somebody who's wealthy, and therefore you ultimately increase your chances of becoming wealthy. So focus on that first milestone, your tipping point, but importantly, the first £100,000. If you get there, you almost inevitably will become wealthy. If you found this useful, do make sure you hit that like button, because we put a lot of work into these videos. Also subscribe to the channel, and in the notes of this video you can find out more information about how you can get started investing.